Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Versus Stars podcast. All my loyal listeners, thank you for your continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. This is a very special episode because Tim Russ boards the mothership. You know him as Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager. Now he returns as Tuvok on the third season of Star Trek Picard. Come on board as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Russ. Thank you so much for coming to the Versus Stars podcast.
My pleasure.
It's an absolute honor to speak with you, sir. I'm a big fan, and I'm really glad that you came on.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I always start off with a question of inspiration. So what inspired your love of acting? Who are your earliest influences?
Some of my earliest influences would have been James Earl Jones, very early on. Actually, I loved Peter O'Toole's work growing up, Charlton Heston. There have been a few that I've really admired along the way. And I have to say that I think when I started getting interested in acting, I was like in high school at the time. So I think it was much more about being involved in the classes, acting classes, and the actual stage productions that really got me going. But as far as influences, yeah, it would be those individuals. Also, William Marshall also, I like to put him on the list.
So you said you were doing it kind of more for the social experience of it. At what point did you realize you had a flair for acting and that there was something that just grabbed you as something that you would be highly skilled at?
I think it was probably being able to perform in the projects that I did when I was in high school. It was big stage musicals, and to be able to pull those off successfully at least gave me the motivation and confidence to consider pursuing that at a college level. And then once in college, I was able to score some decent roles there and to work professionally actually before I got out of college. So that was also an inspiration, and it certainly boosted the confidence to pursue it as a full-time career.
Now, as someone who also loves music and I read astronomy, was that something that were those loves, did they come first? Were there something that you were pursuing at the same time?
Yeah, music has started when I was 16, 17. I was very young when I started playing music. It was before I got interested in acting, actually. So that's been going on for decades. The astronomy came in about 35 years ago, roughly, when I just started pursuing it as a hobby on my own. And so, having worked on a sci-fi project, that was just coincidental in terms of when it happened. But I was interested in astronomy long before that, and certainly music very long before that. Music was definitely my first love.
So when for astronomy, for our listeners, are we talking you have a telescope that you're using? And I'm sure they want to know which kind.
Got several. I've got 7 of them at least. They range from everywhere from a short tube refractor to 8-inch and a 5-inch Schmidt Cassegrain, Maksudov Cassegrain, Dobsonian, 10-inch Dobsonian. And right now, the newest one that I have is called the Unistellar EV Scope, which is a imaging telescope. So it's a combination of a telescope with a 4-inch mirror. It's got an eyepiece and all that good stuff. Very small, very lightweight, but it's basically it has a built-in imaging sensor that allows me to image deep sky objects that are very faint, wow, very low magnitude, and very distant, and not easy to see even with a large mirror out in dark skies. You're not going to get that much of a detail out of them. This imager is an accelerated sort of imager. It layers the light constantly, and so within 3 or 4 minutes, I can bring in, nebulas and galaxies within the city limits of Los Angeles, which it also has a filter built in, which will create more of a contrast background, so these objects will stand out.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's the new. Yeah.
That's when you get the good stuff. Unfortunately, I only telescope I ever had. There was this telescope that I got that I got a thing at a Salvation Army, and I tried using it with my wife in the backyard, and it was such incredible garbage. I think we tried just looking up at the sky, and all thing you could see was like this, just black. That's all you could see. It was nothing visible whatsoever.
Nothing there at all. Yeah, no. You can get the smallest and cheapest and easiest telescopes to use right now that are certainly decent quality to be able to look at the night sky, whether it's the moon and the planets. Any size telescope you can get for that, and you just want to make sure you get them at at a place that sells telescopes, not at Walmart or any place like that. You got to go to the companies that make telescopes and get a professionally made telescope, a real one. But they can cost anywhere from 200 to 10,000. But you can get them for $200-300. You can get telescopes that can see the craters of the moon up close, and also the rings of Saturn easily, and the moons of Jupiter, the cloud bands of Jupiter, the features on Mars when it's close to the Earth. You can see all that stuff with very small telescopes, as long as they're quality telescopes.
So what you're saying is the Salvation Army was not good enough.
Salvation not gonna work, man. Not gonna work at all. No, sir.
So you're in the Los Angeles Astronomical Society, right?
Yes, I have been for a number of years. Yeah.
That is very cool. So can you tell listeners a little bit about that? I'll just point out from where I teach. I'm an English teacher, but on the side, on electives, I teach astronomy. So I just love this stuff. So please tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, Los Angeles Astronomical Society. It's a group of us in Los Angeles that have our own telescopes and things. And we sort of connect with the Griffith Observatory here in LA. And every month we'll have a public star party. We'll all bring our telescopes up to the front lawns and let all the general public that are coming there, the tourists and everybody else, visitors, to look in all the telescopes that are set up on the front lawn. And we're all looking at something typically as different as we can, given that it's the middle of the city and such. And most of those telescopes are optical telescopes, so they're you're at the mercy of the city lights and and such. But you're able to see the planets and the moon and things like that. And not even that, and people have never seen the moon close up. It's pretty stunning to them. So we get a kick out of being able to explain things to people and how the basics of sort of the solar system that they're looking at and things like that. And also, with the telescope that I've got now, the Unistellar it just breaks through all of that too as well, because it's I can slap it on to the Whirlpool Galaxy and see that in detail. And to see that through the eyepiece in detail it's stunning. This thing picks up color as well. And incidentally, the telescope will track asteroids. It will also do exoplanet transits on stars. So it's a pretty hefty telescope. I've also imaged some comets that have been nearby as well.
Now, do you post these images to social media or
Absolutely do. Yes, I do. I post it to Facebook and to Twitter, and typically when I get something new. But if you scroll down my page on Facebook, you'll see some images in there. Eventually, when you get to them, you'll get them. And if I post them to the Unistellar sites as well. But the ones that I've gotten myself, I usually post those on Facebook. And I think what I might do is I might add some to my web page at some point in time. I might do that. Typically, the web page is for acting and music, but maybe I will. But Facebook, I do post them. Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's been a hell of a year for astronomy, hasn't it? With James Webb over the last year, and then you've had the announcement to go to the moon with the 4 astronauts. I mean, it's a hell of a time to love space and astronomy.
It is coming together, man, and it's going to get more and more exciting. I think in the next 20 years, we're going to be seeing some amazing stuff I'd say within the next 10 years, especially with the James Webb. They're building another 1 or 2 telescopes that are going to go up, that are going to do some other analytical stuff for the planets, looking for atmospheres around the planets, etc. It's going to get crazy here in a minute.
So what do you think that about the privatization of space with things like SpaceX, stuff like that, versus NASA doing the exploring?
Well, the thing about privatization is that those people they're motivated. They're motivated by profit, obviously. So as long as you've got backers and investors who see the dollar signs in the future, it's going to move along at a really good clip. And it's going to be more efficient because you don't have government agencies bogging everything down. You have just one person as a CEO, and he or she can say whatever has to go is going to go, and it's just going to move that much. There's no other entity that has an input. I mean, I'm really amazed at what Musk has done as far as his rocket. You look at the cockpit, the simplicity of that cockpit. It's a glass cockpit. I mean,
Yeah.
there's it's just a panel of electronic control. I'm like, holy, what a difference from the Apollo or the shuttle, right? And it's going to space doing the same exact thing. So to be able to put that together and make it happen in such a short period of time, that was nothing to get that together in terms of time. And now he's servicing, we're actually using it. NASA's using his rocket. And it's not going to stop there. I mean, you've got the mining of asteroids that's going to be in the offing. There might be some mining on the moon. I don't know how much, what the resources are that they're going to be able to look for, but there's probably some material there. I don't think you're going to be able to stop it. As a matter of fact, all the other countries are doing the same thing. China and the rest of them, the European Space Agency, they're all going to want to get in on this. So they're not going to want to be the only ones left out. Going to happen.
The interesting with privatization, I think it's going to be how we get to Mars. I think that's the way it's going to happen. But I do wonder, will they share the knowledge as freely as if, when NASA would have if they had done the discovery?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know about that. As far as the knowledge and the science, I mean, I would assume that they would have, folks on board for the science to do the science and to be able to share that science. The question will be whether or not, who's going to own the patents, for whatever it is that they find or discover or whatever it is they want to use down, as far as getting anything out of Mars that's monetary, is the question. And I know that, as I mentioned earlier, asteroid mining is really where I think the money is going to be, and that's going to be just like it was mining for gold and diamonds and on the planet, is that you go stake your claim and you get that claim and you can do whatever you want with it. So I think that's what's going to happen as far as that goes. But as far as Mars, I would hope that that whoever's involved in that would at least, that all the scientists in the world are going to be wanting to share and have access to that information. And it's going to be interesting as to who they select as a crew, whether or not it's going to be an international crew or it's going to be all American crew. We don't know. We also don't know what involvement NASA will have in terms of that mission as well. I know NASA's planning to go, so and I know Musk wants to go as well. So we'll see about all that.
Well, I think the cool thing that I think will happen, regardless if it's SpaceX or NASA or whatever, is that when this happens, the fascination again with space, I think, will be reignited. Because I think, like in the '60s, a lot of people, when space became, making the moon, all that, people got excited about science again. People got an education. I would like to think that once that happens, there'll be a shift again to education and knowledge again, and we'll move in that direction once more.
Yeah. Oh, I think it would be. I would hope that it would be. And in regards to Elon trying to get to the Mars with a crew, that the question would be like, what his profit motive would be for going to Mars. You can say, like I said, again, an asteroid, you've got a profit motive because you've got a return on what you get. You got material, you got raw materials.
Yeah.
What is it how would he get his money back? I mean, would he, put a price on the science that was sold and sell the science to every single individual who wanted it? I mean, would you have to pay to get that science that they gathered? That's a question. Would he stake a claim on Mars in terms of any kind of permanent base? That I don't know if he could do, but he could possibly charge for the information of the science that he collects and they bring back. That's a possibility. Certainly the Mars rocks, the materials that they might return with, they could certainly charge for that. I mean, there's got to be whatever that profit motive is for him to make that expenditure to go to the Red Planet. And they've got to hang out there for a year and a half, or whatever it is, before they can return. So I don't know. You'd have to figure out what his profit motive would be, compared to, like I said, going to the space station for NASA or going to an asteroid, and even the moon, is a permanent base. The only thing you're going to get is you get a launch pad for going out into the solar system. You get possibly some raw materials there. You have a presence so that, as a country, you might be able to say, well, this is our corner of the moon and blah, blah, blah. And it can do some more research while you're there, et cetera. But I don't know. I don't know what his profit motive would be, how he's going to want to make that money back for the expenditure of going to Mars.
I mean, I wonder. See, my thought would be it would more likely be ego versus and also brand. It
Well,
was SpaceX that made it to Mars. It is me, so I'm the one you're going to pay to do everything else.
that's certainly a that's certainly a non-monetary sort of reward, isn't it? It's like nothing in there that has dollar signs on it. So I get have at it, Haas. I say it's a good thing. It's better. It's better that than him charging everybody, dollars, millions of dollars for the data and the science that he collects. But I'll bet you he ends up doing that. That's what I think.
It's kind of funny. It's like when you think about something like Star Trek and how they viewed as like this national federation thing. When we look at where we are now, you would think the federation then is owned by someone like Elon Musk, who's like running by the direction we're moving in.
Yeah, that's a far cry from what the concept is for Star Trek, which was basically a space version of the United Nations. I mean, that's what that was. Musk is a privateer. He's a privateer. I mean, when the Europeans set out to conquer North America and South America and the islands and things, they came out because there is profit. It's what they're going to bring back and what they're going to make on profit. What are you bringing back to us if we're going to finance this expedition? Yeah. The expedition is going to Mars. He's got to finance that. What does he get out of it? If it's just ego, man, that's good for us. Have at it, boss. I'll give him all the ego he wants. But the only other thing he could do would be to sell the information that he gathers. That's all I can think of. But yeah, that's a far cry. The Trek world is not based on monetary gain.
Right.
It's not based on a monetary world. It's not based on capitalism. So at the end of the day,
it's philosophically very interesting to think that once again the idea of when we think of Roddenberry that the future will be led by the pursuit of knowledge and just humanism. Everyone is worth the future and pursuit of knowledge.
Right.
But apparently reality is going to be it's corporation and ego that actually gets you there.
That is today. We don't know what 300 years from now is going to look like. And that's the thing is that, I always talk to people about the fact that you don't understand how different things are going to be a couple of centuries from now. You have no idea. I think if you tried to imagine it, you probably couldn't. If you landed on a time machine in the middle of 200 years from now, plus, your head would explode. You wouldn't know up from down or right from left. You wouldn't understand anything you were seeing or hearing because it would be so dramatically different. And we have no idea what that's going to look like. We can only extrapolate or guess or imagine. So, the Trek world is set a number of centuries into the future. It's not around the corner. And I think in reality, it's going to be a little farther than that, perhaps, before we get to that point. But it ultimately, the Trek world involves alien contact. It involves alien interaction, et cetera, et cetera. Likely, it's mostly going to be us at that time. We hopefully will have made some discoveries of intellectual species outside of our own solar system, hopefully in the next 10 or 20 years. But the thing about the Trek world would be working. What we would have is the nations of the world working together to colonize space. Essentially, that's what's going to happen in the next 200 years. We're going to be colonizing other parts of the solar system, the moons of Jupiter or Saturn, probably. Most likely. So that's where we're going to be heading, and permanent presences in space, obviously. It's a heavy lift, man, because we are nowhere near cut out for that stuff. It's bad enough trying to, deal with what's under the oceans because we're not suited for that. But we're talking about outer space, man, that is a trip. Everything, there's nothing that actually works for us out there without us bringing it along. Or re-engineering ourselves to be able to breathe Martian atmosphere,
Well, like I said, me and my wife just recently watched Counter at Farpoint, and we're talking about talking about the human race isn't ready to come out here. You're primitive, everything else. I'm thinking to myself, My God, we're from that perspective, we're so not ready.
We aren't. Yeah, we're physically certainly not ready.
Right.
I would hope that the people who are pursuing science and exploration are not going to have, capitalism at their forefront of their minds. I think that the people who are actually doing the work and the science and the desire to explore are going to be that's going to be much closer to the reality of Trek than anything else. It really is. The difficulty again is the technical aspect of doing that. That's what's tricky. Is really the tech, involved in us surviving in those very harsh and unforgiving environments, man. I mean, that is asking a lot of the
Yes.
human condition to do something like that. Just mountains, again, without re-engineering human beings to be able to survive that.
Now, for us to get there, do you foresee a future that we will get back to knowledge as and science as a pursuit instead of? I feel like we kind of like fell back a little bit into this,
Oh,
away from the importance of education.
oh hell yeah! That's going to happen. There's going to be a shift, societal shift,
Mm,
eventually. It's kind of the seeds of it are growing right now. And the younger people are going to be the ones that are going to say, okay, enough is enough. And the priorities are going to shift from, who's got all the money in the top of the pyramid to, no, we're going to share all this. And that is going to happen. There's
mm.
not going to be, the famous elementary school teacher was talking about it. She was Jane Elliott was from the 1960s. And she was saying, you can elect Trump after Trump after Trump after Trump. You cannot stop an idea. You cannot stop a movement when it starts. You can't stop it.
Mm.
So ultimately, when the young people realize, and they're realizing it just now, they're just starting to realize it. We see it every day on the news that they are going to be a force of nature. They're going to be the ones that take over the reins of government and power. That's that simple.
Mm.
And they're going to be coming from a different perspective than those who are in there now, who came from the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it came out to be. So they're going to have a different perspective of priorities, and those priorities are going to change the way in which our society is built and developed. We have a lot of challenges to deal with coming up, not just the environment, but we have the population that's growing on this planet.
Yeah.
In every single corner of this planet, the population is growing. And everybody who's born needs their resources that they're going to need, and they have, the waste that's produced, and the stuff that's being used in order for survival. I mean, all these things have to be dealt with on a larger scale. And
Mm.
if you don't shift those priorities to the human individual, you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some really ugly stuff going on, on the ground, because people aren't going to want to, tolerate it or put up with it anymore. So it's going to reach a point where things are going to have to tip the other direction. And that's going to happen eventually. We may see it. I might see it in my lifetimes.
I feel like something like that would have to be, I would say, forced through desperation. Like there's no other choice but to move forward because you can't make it anymore of where you are. And I think people have to be kicked in the right direction. They can't just find their
Oh,
way
yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think it's a wake up call when they, wake up and realize they can't buy any food, or they can't, feed their children, or they can't the kids can't get an education, or they can't afford a place to live. It's going to reach the point where, everybody's got to stop and say, okay, look, it's time for the individuals and working people of this world to have a break, and a
Mm.
say so, and a real say so. And not have decisions made for them by a handful of people who have all the money. So at the end of the day, that will happen, and people are going to stop tolerating, that kind of abuse,
Yeah.
as long as they can stay off their cell phones or the reality shows on television. We should be able to make it. We can only cross our fingers in that regard.
That is true. It would be nice if one of the things I read that was unfortunately sad, that's the CW, who did a lot of the superhero stuff, is I'm moving more into reality TV because it's just cheaper. I was like, there's so much inspiration that comes from great television, great fictional scripted television that would be missed if we move to the cheaper reality, which is so disappointing.
Yeah, that has been going on for some time. That shift to, for some networks anyway, to making stuff that doesn't cost anything, because of course it's all corporate driven. And again, It's the profit motive of the corporations. To remake everything instead of making new things, instead of creating new stuff and new art, you're just remaking the stuff that's already been done,
Right.
3 or 4 times over. And you see that as well. I didn't grow up with that. We didn't have sequelitis when I was growing up. So that's because they all they want is to make money. They don't want to spend any money or time or energy on anything new. They don't want to take any chances because they have a quarterly bottom line for their shareholders that have to go. Eventually, I hope within luck again that shift will go from what the profit is for the shareholders to everybody else's interest as well. But yeah, it's an example right there. Is that it's all about how much we can make, how much
Yeah.
money can we make. Our news media has gone on that road. Everybody's down that road. It's all, how many clicks, how many ratings, how much commercial time can we sell, and everything is like a Super Bowl now. It's like every event, whatever it might be, just looks like it's packaged like the Super Bowl. It's like we're watching the Super Bowl. I'm like, man, alive, man. Again, it's because they're trying to make it entertainment and not what it actually is. And we're kind of stuck in that regard. But again, I think the young people out there are the ones that start the revolutions. It's never the older people, it's always
Yeah.
the young. And the young, I think, are going to eventually, because I think they're going to realize it, because it's going to be very tough for them, very difficult for them. They're going to say, okay, well, why is it so difficult and so tough? Why is it, are we in the situation we're in? Who's running the show? Who's minding the store? And they're going to be the ones that want to mind the store. So yeah, it's gonna start slow, and it's going
Mm.
to take a long time for that to happen, but it will happen. The number of people involved and in the loop are many, and running a society or government and administering to a government or society is very tricky business. You've got so many people that all want something different. It's complicated, man. Yeah,
And,
you can't 10 people to agree on where to go to lunch, for God's sake.
well, I think from an entertainment standpoint, when we're talking about sequels, I think what people love the idea of Star Trek, the franchise, is that every time they made a Star Trek, a new show of Star Trek, they did make it different. If they felt unique among themselves, even though they had
Sure.
the foundation is the same, they
Yeah.
felt distinct from each other, which didn't have that. It wasn't a remake or a retool. It was something new.
Yeah, exactly. The franchise is a different beast than making a reality show or just remaking the same story that you had before, which is
Right.
just lunacy to me. I mean, just you told the story. All you're going to do is retell the story, the same damn story. Uh, Franchises based on Marvel is a serial, and so is franchises. Those are all Star Trek is are all serials,
Yeah.
and because you have an entirely different concept for each one, different characters, different place, different things going on, and those are all that you can roll that out all day long. Plus, it's science fiction. For a serial, an anthology, like the Twilight Zone, for example, you can tell those, you can run that thing from a million years because every one of your stories is going to be different. So as long as they do come in
Mm.
with a different concept, different cast, different things going on, different issues, then you can keep rolling that stuff out. It isn't like they're redoing the original series episodes,
Right.
and packaging them and telling the same exact story. That's not what they're doing. So, we're, that's got legs and it can go on for a while, and it looks like it will be.
Now, one of the cool things is that I know a documentary is being made about Voyager called "To the Journey: Looking Back at Star Trek Voyager." That's something you're taking part in, participating in that document. I know it's at least what I read is that it's filming.
Yeah,
Other ones.
I did a really long interview for it. I think it was that one I did it for. It was a while ago, really long. And it was all just every grimy detail about working on the show and all the stuff behind the scenes and blah 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 and stuff that gone on about a million times over. But yeah, it was if it's the same one, it was pretty long and involved. And there's also the Voyager documentary that's coming out. God, is it this year? It might be later on this year. I think the Voyager documentary is going to come out this year as well, which is specifically for Voyager. Um, so there was that one and the one you're talking about, which I think was History Channel. I think the History
Hmm.
Channel was behind it. There was one called The Captains, wasn't it? There's one called The
Yeah,
Captains.
there's the captains. I know Amazon had the center chair or center seat.
Mm-hmm.
That was around
That's the
for
one I did. The center seat is the one I did.
yeah.
That's the one.
The,
Yeah.
the one I was talking about is Voyager. That's I think Zapona's doing that one, and
Yeah. Oh,
comes
Voyager.
out I think in 2024 it said. I think
Yes,
it's next.
Yep, 20. Or is it 24? Yeah, it might be 24. Yeah, the docs take, I don't know, 2 or 3 years to make, so no surprise on any of that. But yes, Voyager documentary, and then Center Seat. It was Center Seat. That's the one. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think that I want to say that was associated with, it's something to do with History Channel. Either History Channel was financing it or co-producing it or something. But anyway, that one I did a while back. And is that out yet? Because I haven't seen
Oh,
it.
Center Seat. Yeah, that one's. I watched that a couple of months back, and that one's out. I think they did like 10 episodes on that one, 11 episodes.
I didn't wasn't I in it? Wasn't I doing something?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
They when they got to the Voyager part, they talked to you. They talked to Jeri Ryan, and I know they did not. I don't think they talked. Oh, they talked. Oh, Kate Mulgrew wasn't there, and then there was a couple of people they didn't talk to.
All right.
They
Oh,
did. They get to you.
fantastic. I'm glad it came out and everybody was happy. Because I just remember saying they said it was going to be a really, how many episodes was it? It was like a whole bunch of
It's
stuff.
like 10 or 11 episodes.
Yeah,
They covered all of like
that's
every
it.
episode.
That's right. Like a blanket. That's what I remember. Okay. Now I got it. Uh, I I don't they don't inform me of those things. They never tell me. They don't send me anything. I don't, they come and they just it's gone, and that's the end. We're moving on to the next thing.
Why do you think there is such a fascination with talking to about these shows? And I mean, there's been so many documentaries on these. What do you think the fascination is with revisiting them, especially the series?
It's fandom is all it is. It's people who are, my next door neighbor is probably never watched a single one of these things, so they don't care one way or the other. There's as much fascination with by the dedicated Trek fans to this kind of subject and this show and this concept and the franchise as there are those who are fanatics about football, baseball, basketball, and soccer. It's all the same stuff. It doesn't necessarily change the world, but it's a pastime, and it's a pleasure that people want to take part in, and they can relate to it. They feel it. They're fans of the project, and that's just the way it is, man. And every other show or endeavor or pastime has their fan base. So you always talk about Trek fans being, dressing up as the characters and then I go, well, have you ever seen the end zone of a football game?
Exactly.
Idiot. Are you kidding me, man? People, with spray painting their entire body 3 different colors and wearing, horns on their head or whatever. I mean, that's just as fanatical in that as it is for this. It's just that is more accepted worldwide or nationwide than the franchise of Trek, specifically Trek, and secondarily for science fiction in general. A lot of people don't watch sci-fi. A lot of people cannot wrap their heads around it. They don't watch it. They don't like it, and it's just not something that they watch. Whereas you'll have people from one side of the country to the other watching, Housewives of Beverly Hills, or, the cop shows or the judges shows or lawyers shows or whatever. And they'll watch those things religiously, but not watch Trek. But you'll have people who watch Trek will watch those other shows as well. It just doesn't go the other way. Science fiction is very specific and has a specific audience, and the Trek world especially has a specific audience, and it's often stigmatized because of the fandom and the way that the people that watch the show relate to the show. It's very different than Star Wars, its counterpart, because Star Wars, I think, has a little bit broader appeal, but still in that realm. The problem with Trek is that the people, the fans themselves, have been stigmatized by, sort of being oddball this or oddball that, and so they, the general public just looks that way at them, and that's the only difference really is to why the criticism is with them, or they get poked fun at because they dress up in the characters and go to the convention. That's the reason why that it's looked at differently than the broader base of science fiction, or certainly different than the dramas, the straight up dramas, which just, I don't know, they put me to sleep, most of them. But science fiction to me is a much more interesting genre. And it is limited, in terms of its appeal on a broad base. A lot of people just don't watch sci-fi.
Did you find it weird as you're talking about that there's people who basically cosplay sports who don't understand cosplay Star Trek?
Yeah,
somehow separate
exactly.
entities.
Yeah, yeah, because it's more accepted. Sports are more widely viewed, more widely accepted, much more have a much greater fan base, and it always has. Sports has been around forever, I mean, since the ancient Greeks, for God's sake. So it's just a much broader appeal to so many people,
Mm,
all genders. It doesn't matter. Uh, so, and that's just the way it is. You got me. I played sports. I was growing up. I used to like watching football. Today, I could care less about any of that. I don't watch any of it. I'll catch an occasional soccer game if it happens to be on. I happen to be sitting in front of it. I might watch it for a minute, and I'll watch the Olympics when they're on. I really don't care that much. I don't fanaticize about baseball or basketball. I could give a rat's ass about any of it. But because to me it's just a pastime. It's like whatever. But if it comes to telling stories, that's where I live.
mm,
I love stories. I love concepts that I've not seen before, and stories I've never heard before, and twists and turns and reveals and discoveries and concepts, and you know um, turning things on their head, and showing something from an entirely different angle that you and that's what Trek does. It always has done that. And science fiction in general can explore the human condition. I like pushing the boundaries
mm,
of the human condition. You put a human being in this circumstance, how do they react? What do they do? How does that person, how does that individual, how would that person relate to, a bloody invasion by aliens? I mean, can you imagine? You wake up in the morning, you got your stupid, boring ass day or whatever it is you're going to do. You're going to work all of a sudden there's this giant 4 mile long craft hovering over your city. Come on, man. Your life is no longer the same. Whatever it is you were doing is gone. Can you imagine the impact of something like that, or an invasion where literally your whole world is just crumbling around you? Then now, how does that human being relate to other human beings?
mm,
That's the experiment. That's the stuff that fascinates me. Making a discovery, a scientific discovery that reawakens, wonder and your imagination and your perspective on where you are in the universe. I mean, come on, man. How does that have to do with somebody running a football over a goal? Years, it's
well, at the very least, you're not going to work the next that day.
yeah, you ain't going to work that day. That's a whole different. That's going to stop right there. Yeah, it'll be very interesting. And that's the stuff that fascinates me. Just looking at
Yeah.
looking at things in such a different light and in such a different way, and just telling a story, you know, um, in a way that hasn't been told before. It's just fascinating to me. I love that stuff. I just love it.
So being able to play in Star Trek as Tuvok, did that allow you to kind of explore some of these ideas? And did you, when you in thinking about playing Tuvok, did you try to bring some of that curiosity into the character?
Now, what I wanted to do with the writers, and we did it a couple of times, is I wanted to introduce the character to situations that the character would not be able to deal with very easily. You couldn't just use logic.
Mm,
There's a couple of three stories. We had Gravity was one of them.
yep.
Rise with Ethan Phillips with Rise, and there was another one. I can't remember what the name of it was, where my character was faced with this emotional sort of barrage from a
Mm,
character, and either my life or the life of the ship or something had to come as I was faced with things I had to adjust to, that I wasn't accustomed to adjusting to. I had to see from a human perspective in order to get out of the situation. I had to understand the other perspective, and go along with it or deal with it in some way. And that's because I mean, otherwise you're just walking through the shows, the series, the episodes as you are, and you're just doing your thing, and everything else is doesn't matter because that's them and this is me. But when that character is involved and has to make a decision based
mm,
on something that is not, comfortable with him, and something he's not familiar with, something he doesn't understand, can't wrap his head around, but yet knows that he has to use these tools that he's unfamiliar with in order to extricate himself from the situation that he's in. So those were the challenges of having that character face those things. Was great to me. That's what.
I mean, I think one of the cool things in, like, to talk about Gravity is that they introduced the idea of a young Tuvok rebelling against logic and wanting to pursue passion. I think that was season 5 that episode occurred. What did you think about, and did you wish they had introduced that to the character earlier so you could have played that throughout his transition as Tuvok over the seasons?
Well, for Gravity being stuck on the planet and this woman, and she falls in love with him, and all that good stuff. I mean, it was where it came was fine because I think we explored some other things before that. You know, I think I countermanded one of the orders the captain gave me, and I got busted for it because I had an intention of saving, rectifying, and helping the situation by making that decision. And I should have made it, based on her orders, but I did it anyway. And I had stuff with Meld where he was completely released from emotions control that he had, and also with there was the one with the Ponfar episode. It was not mine. It was another Vulcan's stuff, and having to deal with that with the other character who was going through it was also interesting because we hadn't explored that before. I had to actually we had to actually make up things for that episode because we didn't have any premise to base them on. We had nothing, and the crew was like, "Well, has this been? No, it hasn't been done before. So okay, we have to come up with something that makes sense based on what little information we had prior." And that's exactly what we did for that episode, which was pretty cool, to be able to work with the writers on it. So yeah, the sequence in which they unfolded these episodes was fine with me. I mean, it takes, you've got 7 years to go ahead and do this, so you might as well spread it out over 7 years.
I think for me the coolest episode with Tuvok was Flashback when George Takei is in the episode.
Yes, yes.
What was that like with George having just meeting George Takei and that idea of connecting the X being an extra in Star Trek 6 to making an entire story around it? And was that your idea where you're like, oh, by the way, guys, let's do something? Or did someone come to you, and what did you think about the idea when someone brought it to you?
Oh, I thought it was pretty cool. I played a character in Generations with as a technical security officer on the bridge, and had a couple of lines of dialogue with Kirk and others. But at the end of the day, working with George was great. We actually recreated that whole sequence. We didn't use the stock footage because the initial plan was to use the stock footage from the film, and instead the director wanted to recreate it and reshoot it. Whatever reason, but he did, and so we did, and it was great because it's also a backstory for myself and Kate's character which is again along the way. Here's now the backstory of Tuvok. Now we can go back and see where he started from, where he started, how he got his beginning, and what his relationship was with the captain, and that's a good deal. That's a very cool thing. Great episode, Flashback. Brandon Rock wrote that.
I really liked, I mean, especially with the fact it looks like they brought back all the original actors too from the bridge.
Yep.
It looked that way. That must have been quite the experience as well.
Yes, it was. It was. Yeah. That's a good episode, man. They did a good work on that. Great episode. Yeah.
I think that'd be one of my favorite Star Trek. I kind of enjoy when they harken back to some of the older shows and movies that have gone back and they revisit them, just like, because there's that little nostalgia aspect. You're like, oh, that really was a great movie. And George Takei obviously is one of the great people in the world.
Great to work with too. Just great to work with. Wonderful to work with.
Now, one thing that did happen recently is that you also appeared in Star Trek Picard, the 3rd season of that.
Yes.
So what was that conversation like when they called you? Was it something they had planned, before? This was something they were like, hey, we would you like to come back, in what capacity?
Yeah. My managers and agent reached out to me, said that they're asking about your availability for Star Trek Picard, sometime in the next month or two. And I said, yeah, that would be great. Let's check it out when it happens. And then they finally said we need them for this day or that week or whatever, and they sent me the scenes and sides for the whole thing, and said would like to have you on board. And I looked at the material, and realized, oh, it's going to be a twist, which is kind of cool. I love that whole thing with who you think I am, who I am, but I'm not. And I thought that was great. I thought that was really cool. So it was a no-brainer to go ahead and sign on for that. No brainer at all. Just perfect.
So how did you approach playing Tuvok who's not Tuvok? Because you're kind of playing a character that you know, but he kind of isn't the character that you know. So how did you approach doing that?
Yeah, I just played him as Tuvok because he has to convince them that he's Tuvok. So I got to play him as sincerely and straightforward. Otherwise, that twist, that turn at the end doesn't work.
Mm.
It's got to be believable. So not only to the crew, but he's got to be believable to the audience that it's actually him. And so I played it as straight as I could for Tuvok, and then he only falters at the end, with the comment about going to that location, and then he's screwed up. He's revealed his hand. So, and I think there's one beat in there that's a big long beat before I talk about the Calto game, and that's where he's trying to think about. He's trying to remember or trying to find that little piece of information or whatever, and before he says it, and that's the giveaway, just a tiny giveaway. But he shows his hand at the end by picking the wrong thing, and he didn't have all the details. So I thought it was, I just played him straight as I could, as straight as I could. Yeah.
Now when you're obviously the Changeling is Tuvok without a spoiler for everyone who doesn't know the show, but everyone's been watching Picard, so they know it. Um, does that suggest that the real Tuvok is dead? Were there any discussions about what that means for the actual character?
Um. Yeah. No. It's folks out there will have to watch the rest of the episodes to find out.
Oh, Tuvok, you come back? You're gonna be
Watch.
that'll be absolutely fantastic. And I mean, obviously, it led to the big questions that everyone is asking, which is, will there be then a Voyager version of Picard? We're focused on the Voyager cast, and is there
Yeah,
any
I don't know.
whisperings? And are you hearing anything from the
I
renewal?
heard a couple of rumors. Some people sent me an article that was written in some publication about them, exploring the possibility of developing a Voyager series. I honestly don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how they would package the concept because
Hmm.
in the series we came home already. So the question is, who's going to be on the crew?
Hmm.
Plus, a lot of the Voyager cast has moved on to do other things, so probably not going to want to come back and don the uniform and get back on the spaceship bridge. I don't see that happening.
Hmm.
Um, all of us are much older now, so we don't look the same. It's going to be silly for us to be in the same place we were when we left. That doesn't make sense. So it's going to have to be that everybody has gone off to their own ways, and that they might have a new crew
Hmm.
for that series, and this only bring us in for cameos or recurring or whatever it might be. Um, that's all I could think of for. That's what I think they would do if they tried to repackage it. I don't think they're going to want to get all of us back on board because
Would
we would have moved on in the storyline. We would have moved on because we
would
came home. You know?
would you be interested in doing it if that idea came up, or do you kind of feel like the time has passed?
Yeah, I mean, if it came up, I would look at what they had me doing and what the plan was, and maybe go back and forth with them about details about what that is and how it would play out before I would accept a role. I might want to say, well, look, I'd rather do this or not do that in the process of putting the
Hmm.
stories together. So it depends on what they would come back with. Yeah.
But I would say for I think the fan base is I think it's really is cool that Trek has had this renaissance over the last 5-6 years with Discovery and Picard and Strange New Worlds and all that. And I think it's been fantastic for the franchise and
Yes.
for the fan base.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for a while there was just a black hole or nothing,
Right.
for a long time. So they finally decided to get the thing going again, and sure enough, they're because of the streaming services, the explosion of the streaming services and such. Now they've got outlets, and now they've got a resurgence of the fans being able to watch all of it. They've got all that stuff going on, the merchandising back up again. Yeah. I was wondering how long it was going to take them to do it. It seemed silly that they hadn't done it even sooner. But
Mm,
I think it was probably smart to give it a breather and let it die down for a minute, and then so that people are anticipating
mm.
new one rather than just keep layering it on, and just give them a break and then come back. And now it's, oh, okay, now it's more exciting because we haven't had it for such a long time. So that probably wasn't a bad strategy. And now they're just like gangbusters. Like,
Yes.
I mean, they are pulling off Picard. Discovery's got its last season's coming up, is going to air soon, so they got that. That's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Got Strange New Worlds, and I think that's the only one, isn't it? The only live action coming is Strange New Worlds, the new one, right? Is
Well,
that
I
right?
know they just announced they're making Starfleet Academy now, and I think Section 31 has been in talks for like 4 years or 5 years
Yes, for
now.
100 years. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think, yeah, Academy, I think is being developed, and then Strange New Worlds. And the question is, how long are they going to run each one of those series? Is it, for us it was 7 years on average, and now it's like more like 4 or 5,
Yeah.
uh, 3 and 5. So if they can make the arc, which probably maybe the better way to do it is not to run it too long because then you burn it out.
Yeah.
Keep it between 3 and 5 years, and then move on to something else.
Uh, and I think one of the cool things, which like Picard, is that they're not leaning on just nostalgia. They actually made a a damn good series. The third season, not just doing like a nostalgia thing. It actually
Sure.
does
Yeah.
come
Sure.
off, and I think it's one of the best seasons of Star Trek in a while.
Yeah. Everybody's saying that the third season they really ramped it up, but I
Yeah.
think that was because they were going to end it. They were going to go out with a bang. Series television for me is very difficult. The aspect of Voyager was good because the concept was you could tell whatever story you wanted. Every episode could be a standalone,
Yep.
and that's like a serial, and it has that sort of anthology quality to it. So you can really open up your stories.
Yep.
When you're stuck in one place with the same people all the time, it's kind of hard to keep telling the same story. Telling, it's hard to tell a different story every single time that's unique and interesting. So I think it's very hard to do that to keep the audience on there. And I'm not a series fan. I like anthologies. I like
Mm.
serials. I like stories where you have an entirely different set of characters. You have an entirely different circumstance. You have an entirely different story. Each time the credits roll, you have something different going on. And to me, that's more exciting and more interesting than watching the same people do the same thing every week. You know?
I, I must admit, I think if Star Trek ever did an anthology show, it would be fantastic. Like
Yeah.
every episode focused on a different character, different situation,
Oh,
different
different
spot.
situation, different everything. Yeah, it's gonna be way expensive, but that's and because anthologies, that's why you don't see that many of them on television of any kind.
Mm.
Anthologies. I just worked on Poker Face, which is sort of an anthology series, but it's set in contemporary times, which is a lot easier than a show that's set in the future.
Mm.
It's the future stuff that runs the budget through the roof,
Yeah.
because you have to create all of these environments, whether it's physical or CGI. You've got to create all this stuff, costumes and makeup and effects and all that stuff to make these stories happen. Yes, you can do them on a small scale. Some of the episodes can be on a small scale. It's just one or two people stuck on a planet somewhere or whatever. But you're going to have to, do something bigger inevitably. So they're very expensive to shoot. Um, if the anthology takes place in contemporary times, you can get away with it a lot easier. X Files is an example. It took place in present day,
Mm.
so you had elements of sci-fi, but you didn't have to recreate an entire world because a car is a car and a cell phone's a cell
Right.
phone. So those are easier to do from a production standpoint, which is why the networks and production companies and studios aren't going to be keen to do a science fiction anthology type
Right.
format. They want to build the sets once, amortize the cost of the sets over 2 or 3 years, and not have to worry about rebuilding and recreating something for every episode because they only have a certain amount of money per episode to bring these damn things in. So they're very expensive to shoot. They're very expensive to do, and so Trek has to be a solid series with fixed space stations or
Mm.
ships or whatever it might be that you're on most of the time.
Right.
uh,
Right.
and then you introduce storylines into those elements. So
it'll be like the original series where it's the same rocks are in the background on every planet they ever made.
the original series was again like Voyager. Voyager is almost the same as the original because we were in uncharted space. So we ended up spending a lot of money building alien laboratories and alien planets and going on location and doing all this other stuff that was not necessarily on the ship. And sure enough, all those episodes in 7 years, there's a lot of them that were, we had to create. You had I don't know, 500,000 different aliens coming through because we're on the move.
Right.
We're going. So we're discovering, CGI stuff in space, whatever it might be. You have to come up with a story that is new because you're not back there. You're over here.
Right.
And that's like the original series, whereas the other ones are planted in one place. They're in one section of space.
Yeah.
Whatever's, you have to introduce things into that space to make the story happen. It's not the same as what we had, which is almost a serial, the way it was set up.
So what's next for you?
Right now, developing a couple of my own projects, feature projects. I've got one sci-fi series that is also being pitched it's through a production company in LA that has it, and they're trying to get a streamer to pick it up. So it's a sci-fi series, and I've got two a biopic feature and a supernatural thriller, which I'm working on with two other producers, separate. And we'll see what happens. And another science fiction, a second science fiction feature, which is space sci-fi, future sci-fi, with a third producer. So just working on developing those and getting the pitches done with them and things like that. And I'm primarily just interested in the stories and the directing of them, not the producing of them. I just don't like that job at all. So. But I'm in terms of development on the stories, and also whether we shoot sizzle reels or whether we do this or that, or whether we pitch it or trailers and things like that. That's the stuff I would be involved in. But it's just developing. There's not a ton of acting work going on right now because the writer's strike is coming up. So it's pretty slow as far as any kind of TV work right now.
Well, Mr. Russ, when you're ready to talk about the other project, when we come back on the show, it's been an absolute honor to speak with you, sir. And I've really enjoyed my time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.